Well, hello, everyone. This is Zaylor Stout, author of Our Gay History in 50 States, your LGBTQI plus history book that highlights significant people, places, and queer facts on a state-by-state basis. Today, I'm excited to have a dear friend, Barry Leavitt of Lavender Magazine here in the Twin Cities. Hello, Barry. Wave to everybody.
Hello, Z. How are you?
Good, good, good. So Barry and I have been friends for a while now. He's an institution in the Twin Cities here. Let me read off some of his bio just for those that don't know who Barry is. He's been with Lavender Magazine for 22 years, which is our state's big LGBT magazine. Everybody grabs it. It's got all the news and everything anybody needs to see and hear. And so we'll be talking about that as well. He's a VP of Sales and Advertising. He's also served as a commissioner for the Twin Cities Good Times Softball League with NAGA, NAGAAA, which means the North American Gay Amateur Athletic Alliance. He was the executive director when the Twin Cities hosted the Gay World Series here, National Softball World Series. Barry's just been involved with anything and everything, and has been around the institution and the community for a while. And so welcome, Barry, to this week's Facebook Live discussion.
Thank you. Pleased to be here. I've been a viewer, and now I get to be a panelist.
I know there's so much to thank you for as in regards to that. So Barry convinced me to submit for the cover contest to get on the Pride edition for Lavender Magazine, which I ended up winning a few years back. And then there was like this big giant poster board of it, and then he like made me take it home, and so now it's up on the wall, and I feel like Donald Trump. And so I blame you for all of that, Barry.
Every time I go to your place, there you are up on the wall.
Lord have mercy. But then also Barry's a Jew from the Northeast, and so he's been a great friend to my partner, or especially when we moved here from California, he didn't know anybody. So Barry's part of his Jewish community here as well. So there's just lots to thank you for in regard to that. So
and vice versa, because in Minnesota, there is a smaller Jewish community, so it's nice to have people and meet people that you have something in common with.
Absolutely. So starting off with that, right? With family and everything. I know that you are definitely close to your mom and everything, who you've lost recently. So want to make sure that I know you think about her every single day, and we think about you in regards to her. But tell me about your coming out story, because this is something I don't necessarily know if I've heard about it before. So coming out story, Barry Leavitt.
Well, it's an interesting story. I think part of it is me moving out here. So I was not out of the closet when I moved out here, but being here, I got a chance to actually meet a lot of people, get myself involved in the LGBTQ community. I did a lot of activities, and that led me to running the NAGA Softball World Series. Well, the year before, they had done a national story on it in USA Today.
Oh.
And I was worried that they would possibly do something, and I did not want my parents to find out through a story on the news. And so I always wanted to tell them, but every time I would be close to it, I come from a very emotional family. We cry easily. And I think it was just one of those things I could never bring myself to that point. So I did eventually write a letter and mailed the letter. And I remember seeing the phone ring with my parents' number on it and knowing that they were calling about that. And I couldn't lift up the phone. But they left a voicemail, and it says, "We got your letter, we love you," blah, 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 all of that. And really it was fine from that point forward. My dad, who had retired from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, still got their newsletter. He was not a big talker. I'm, as you know, like to talk, and
you are a talker.
I'm much more like my mother. when it comes to that. But my dad was not a big talker. However, he came into our den one time when I was home visiting, and I had a tray table because I was eating something, and he put the newsletter down, and the headline was, and this is in the mid 90s, the headline was that the Federal Reserve had voted to give domestic partner benefits to same-sex couples. And that was his way of acknowledging, and always, my dad, I think my mom probably had more difficulty accepting it, not in a true sense, because she was always accepting and we never had any issues. But I think she always dreamed that, okay, this is her firstborn son, her only son. He's going to get married. He's going to have grandkids. She had played the whole thing out in her mind.
Oh, yeah.
And so she needed to come.
Good Jewish mom. Good Jewish mom. She
Correct.
had it all planned out for you.
Correct. So she needed to come to grips with that. My dad always was the type of person, and my mother said it, he would say, are the kids happy and healthy? And as long as those two answers were yes, then they're fine. And so that was the way it was. So I am lucky. I know a lot of people who have had issues with their parents disowning them, with a lot of issues within the family as a whole. I have never had a backlash from my immediate family, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. Everyone has embraced me for who I am. So I know I am lucky in that regard, that I just, lucked out with the right family there.
Right.
So.
And your siblings? I know you have two sisters, right?
I have two sisters. One actually sells advertising. We jokingly call it the family business. And she sells advertising for CBS network nationally. And then so she lives in New York, and my sister Beth is I believe it's fourth grade teacher in the same school system that we went to school.
Wow.
So yeah, I have three nieces, a brother-in-law. They're all great. My eldest niece just graduated college, and I got
That's right. You were just there.
That. So yeah, I'm lucky. There's always things. I wish I still had my mom around because we talked all the time. But I have a good family and a good network of friends. So.
How did your two sisters handle the news?
Okay, so here's the funny part of that. My sister Eileen, who is the one that works in New York. Okay. Before she was at CBS, there's a serious but also a funny side to this. Before she was at CBS, she worked in fashion. She had worked for Bloomingdale's. Okay. And she had worked for a company called Gant, which made men's clothing. I don't even know if they still exist, but that's who she worked for. There was a downturn in the economy. She got laid off from Gant, but while she was still at Gant, I was dating somebody here, and unfortunately, that person got diagnosed with full-blown AIDS. And we had not been dating for over a year, but in those days, the test was a 2-week wait to find out whether you had it or didn't. Oh, 2 weeks. I did not want anyone since nobody in my family knew at that time, I did not want the first thing to be, hi, I'm gay. And by the way, I'm also, HIV positive. So I called my sister Eileen, and I figured, well, she was in the fashion industry, so she's got to know gay people. And I said, I have something to tell you. And immediately her next words were, I think I know what it is. And she did. She knew what I was calling about. Thankfully, the test was negative, and I, went forward from there. The interesting part is my sister Beth, I have never actually told on a one-on-one. The first time Beth actually heard me say the words that the word gay
Hmm.
in identifying myself was in my eulogy to my mom and how accepting she was. And even my nieces joked later, they were listening and crying. And then all of a sudden they heard something about gay and they looked at each other and said, did we just hear what we thought we heard?
Uh-huh.
Because I had never told them either. So that's kind of how, so everybody knows now. But I think with Beth, she had a family. It never seemed to be a big thing to me. And at a certain point, she knew. I think by around the 2000s, the early 2000s, she
Hmm.
knew, but it just wasn't something that I felt the need to bring up, and it wasn't something that she felt the need uh, to ask me about. So there's that.
Well, I mean, the part that I think is interesting is that, folks that aren't members of the community, right, don't necessarily know that there's always these dynamics in regards to coming out. Do you come out? Do you not come out? Who do you come out to? Do you come out to everybody? And then there's a coming out process that happens all the time, right? It's like, you meet a new neighbor and they're like, oh, where's your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, your husband? And then it's like, there's always that. And then I mean, for me, for example, I grew up on the West Coast, right? And so then I have family in St. Louis and I have family on the East Coast. And then it's like, do I come out to the family that I see every 4 years for the family reunion? It's like, if I'm not bringing anybody home, what's the point, right? I don't know. So I think it's just kind of interesting to always hear people's stories in regards to when they come out, who they come out to, why they don't. Sometimes it's unsaid, all of that.
I also think it has to do with the timing.
Hmm.
I can tell you that I worked at a gay bar on weekends when I was in college, and I worked security. And in those days, I was totally in the closet. Um, and my parents asked me where I worked. Well, my parents were not a couple that went clubbing or anything like that. They went to like the theater and out for
Hmm.
dinners and things like that. So I figured it was safe to tell them that I worked at a club called the 1270.
Because nobody would
Well,
know.
huh? Because they wouldn't know. Well, one morning, I guess my dad told somebody at work that his son was working security at the 1270. And they said, that's a gay bar. And and he obviously was thrown off by that. And they were standing over my bed in the morning because my dad at that time worked the overnights at the Federal
Mm.
Reserve Bank.
Hmm.
And so he was standing with my mom over my bed, and I had just like, they shook me to wake me up, and they said, this is what we've heard. And then I played into the stereotype. And I feel badly about it, but I understand why people do
Hmm.
things at certain times in their life. Boston Magazine, which is, a mainstream magazine, had done a thing on the best of Boston, and they picked the 1270 as the best dance music.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of straight people that went to the 1270. Well, the only thing I could think of at that time was to play into the stereotype that gay men were not as strong. And so I said, yes, there's a mixed crowd there, but the entire security staff is straight.
Hmm.
They kind of let it go. Later on, once I came out, my mom and I would talk about it. And she says, I kind of knew at that point that you were, but she did say, she was honest and said, I think it was better when you came out later because I had time to come to grips with it. And so I don't know what my life would have been like. I tend to think it still would have been similar,
Hmm.
but I don't know what it would have been like if I had said, yes, in fact, I am gay back then when I was probably 22, 23 years old. So
So you think there's a benefit of moving away and then being able to figure yourself out as opposed to like going to college or something, let's say locally, where it's your community, anybody and everybody knows you, and so do you think that's more challenging to come out there?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of a family you have.
Hmm.
Again, I have a close-knit family, and I also have a lot of relatives in the area. The chances, I mean, while not extremely high, of running into them as I'm walking into a gay bar or being out at a restaurant with somebody that I might be on a date with,
Hmm.
there was still that chance. When I moved to Minnesota, I didn't have anything that
Yeah.
kept me. It was almost as if I had my own world out here, and I knew that nobody was watching over me when I was here, and that made it easier. I
Right.
do tend to think sometimes, I have said this numerous times, and that is that I believe in my mind that God creates an infinite number of forks in the road. And God lets you decide which fork you're going to take. And based on that fork, a whole another set of forks come in front of you. And so I tend to think that the fork I took to come out here set things in motion a different way. I do sometimes wonder what the forks in the road would have been had I
Right.
actually said, no, I'm not moving to Minnesota, and that I had actually stayed in Massachusetts. Would I have come out when I did? Would I have come out sooner? Would I have met somebody that I had a relationship with? All of those things go through my mind there. So
Was moving out to Minnesota part of the reason why was coming out and having that sense of freedom part of your decision to move to Minnesota?
no,
Okay.
I moved for somebody. I met them. I
Ah,
met them at the Gay Softball World Series,
which many
and
people do.
yes, that's it. And then I was recently out of college. The plan originally was that I was going to go out there for about 6 to 9 months, and then we would both move back to Boston.
Mhm.
And he was originally from Texas. So
So neither of you from Minnesota.
neither of us from Minnesota, but he had been to Boston and liked it. And then probably about 9 months into the relationship, we started to have some issues
Mhm.
and ended the relationship. I was going to go back to Boston at the end of the summer, but I was talked into it by friends that I had to stay here. And of course, conveniently, those friends now all live in different places,
They left
including
you.
including one of them that lives in Boston. So,
Shame on them.
so but I look at things, life is about choices.
Mhm.
And does every choice work out? No, but I've never regretted. And even my mom, before she passed, she said on multiple occasions, moving out there was the best thing for you, for a couple of reasons. One is I got to be myself, but
Mhm.
two, I was their firstborn and in a Jewish family, and my parents were overprotective. They
Mhm.
thought they needed to be there to save the day for their children every day. And I thought that they'd be there. So when I moved out, they learned that they didn't have to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And I learned that I could actually do things on my own. So,
Like wash your own dishes and do your own laundry, make your
well,
own food.
yeah, I guess.
So
Thank goodness for dishwashers and laundries
oh
and
my
and
goodness.
dryers and washers. So
You do eat out a lot, but then I mean part of your work is advertising and marketing, and you're out there supporting small businesses. So I want to transition into that part of the
sure.
discussion. LGBT print media. I mean, it seems like over the last 5 years, there's been all this turnover, even on a national basis and stuff. So what do you see what's going on? I mean, what's the future for LGBT print media? Is it something that's still necessary? I mean, I know that you have lots of ideas and thoughts in regard to this, especially since, I mean, you're in it. This has been your career for 22 years.
Sure. I think everything changes,
Mm-hmm.
and your job is to adapt. And if you looked at the publications 20 years ago that were in the LGBT community, the ones that didn't adapt are no longer around. When I say adapt, there were a couple of big things. One is, in the early days of LGBTQ media, it was a lot of bar ads,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of sex ads, chat lines, and things like
That's
that.
true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But at the turn of the century, once websites became and things start to go online, things started to change. Also, publications that were news focused, they didn't survive either if they didn't change, because news became old very quickly. If
True.
you were putting out a publication every 2 weeks, and now you can go on in 2 minutes, there's an update on Facebook or a newspaper website, and it tells you exactly what's happened there. So we would have never survived. There was actually a point at which we thought, do we become a newspaper like a tabloid and go fully that way, or do we kind of go full force into the magazine? Because at the beginning, before I was there, Lavender was a magazine format, but it did not have glossy pages. And then it went to glossy covers, but it didn't have glossy inside. So there's certainly an increased cost for that. And so we kind of weighed all the things to that. But I will also say that sometimes the things that help out are the things that you don't know are going to come on the scene. And one of those things was how online actually helped magazines and the LGBTQ media, and in general, media, magazines in general.
So how do you think it helped it?
Because it allowed you to put your issue on an online basis. So therefore, somebody didn't have to physically go to a distribution site to pick up a copy. They could bring it up, in the case of Lavender, on their website, on their iPad, on their smartphone, and it looks just like the print version with the ads, and you're flipping pages. And so if it's here in Minnesota where we have bad winters, if you don't want to go out and get something, our readership has actually increased because we now have more people that can access the magazine through an online basis there. So, in the future, what do I see? I think things go through ebbs and flows. I think when Barack Obama was the president, I think people started to see or think, okay, we've gotten acceptance, we have same-sex marriage, we have all these things, and do we really need this as much anymore? Right. And then Donald Trump came into the office. And then we got to see the reaction of his followers and how they reacted, and how it was okay for things that maybe they thought but never said to now actually say those things out loud. Right. And so when you think that we've come all the way, I have news. I mean, it's probably the line that nobody ever wants to hear, but we're never going to reach 100%. No demographic is going to. It will, as long as there are human beings, and one of those human beings, dislikes the LGBTQ community and can pass it along to somebody else, they're going to do that. And, that's the way that it is. But I do think that there is more of a need for the media to tell the stories of, I don't think it's as much in the news coverage side of things. I think it's more the stories and how different things that maybe don't even happen here in Minneapolis, for instance, but how those things that maybe happen in Boston affects people in Minneapolis, or something that happened in LA affects people in Minneapolis. And so I do think that there will always be people who want to tap into the community, find out specific things. I also think that there's always going to be people who want to pick up a physical copy, and it's not age. The surprising thing is that people would think, okay, everybody who's older wants a physical copy, and everybody who's younger wants to read it online. And the statistics show that's just not the case. It's just, what is your preference on things like that? So I do think that the media is really important, especially in the world that we live in now, and that we need to cover, what's going on in our community.
Yeah, I know for me, when I travel either domestically or internationally, one of the first things I do is, okay, where's the gay spot so I can get a magazine and see what's going on, what the places are, where should we go to eat and all that kind of stuff. Because there are places around the country where it's not necessarily always safe for us to be out and be ourselves, and for me to wear, a pink Stacey Abrams shirt.
Love that shirt.
All right.
I didn't even know who you had on until
I know. I had to wait for the perfect moment, right? Okay, of course, here supporting voting rights and the aspect, and exactly what you said a moment ago, that there's never going to be full acceptance and equality, full acceptance from everyone. Women aren't fully accepted, Black folks aren't fully accepted, immigrants aren't fully accepted, Jews aren't fully accepted, Muslims aren't fully accepted, immigrants aren't fully accepted. So there's always going to be, a segment of the population that's just going to buck the trend, right? But there can come a point when there's a critical mass. Within the last 6 months, if my memory serves me correct, we finally have the majority of Republicans supporting same-sex marriage, which is, more, of course, if you include the whole population, we're well over that. But to go and say that we have the majority of Republicans supporting it means a lot. And that demographic change has been quite significant in a short period of time. And so all of that is people, coming out, telling their stories, showing that we're just as boring as everybody else sometimes. And show the fact that we're not the boogeyman that people have played us out to be. And when people have the ability to meet LGBT folks and to befriend them and, hear what their stories are, they find that we want to be loved just like everybody else and be accepted just like everybody else. And that's what most people want.
That's it. There's another side also to why media, the LGBTQ media is important. And that is that in a world where not everybody embraces doing business with different demographics, right, the first statement you make when you put your ad in LGBTQ media is you are acknowledging to the reader, I know who I'm marketing to, I'm comfortable doing business with you, and you can feel comfortable and respected, that you'll be respected doing business with us. And that is a huge statement, because no matter how much, obviously there are different studies that show the amount of disposable income within the community as a whole. But regardless of how much disposable income there is, there are people and businesses who want nothing to do with us.
Yeah,
and some of them will say it outwardly, but some of them will not. And so what they're really saying to you is, I will take your money, but when I turn around, some of that money is going to go to causes that you probably don't like at all.
Right.
And so I think that there is, I like to say my realtors have always been lavender readers. My mortgage people have been lavender readers. When I have done different things, different business, my car dealer is a lavender or a lavender advertiser, I should have said. But those are important things, because I know when I walk in, I'm going to be treated with respect, regardless of whether, and they may obviously know me because I work with them at Lavender, but I also know them as people and can see them and have heard other stories where people, have interaction with those same people. And it's always a respectful a positive interaction.
Well, here's a question I wasn't expecting to ask you. I don't even know if you can answer it. Are there any advertisers are there any advertisers that you said thanks but no thanks, we don't want your business, based on, their positions, or where they supply their money and find that it was against what the organization or the community is about?
Surprisingly, no, because I think that those people at that level, the ones that you truly know out there, like, I'm not expecting to get a call from Chick-fil-A anytime soon that they want to start putting ads in lavender. And I guess we would cross that bridge, when it comes. There's two sides. Okay, are you simply trying to make money and you're still going to give money to causes that are not positive for the LGBTQ community? Or are you going to, are you changing your whole way of doing business and thinking, and everything is changing at that time? I think those are the things that you'd have to ask yourself if faced with that. I like to say, if you look at, especially with corporate levels, if you look at the underbelly of every corporation, there are probably, even the ones that are very LGBTQ supportive, there's probably a part of that company or some representatives within that company that are not going to be fans of the LGBTQ community, or African American community, or what have you. But what I try and judge people on is, what is my relationship with them? I did have somebody who once said, I won't name the company, but it's a national company, and they were doing some advertising with us, and somebody said they had heard that the upper management was not gay friendly, was how they put it. And I said, I'm never going, because they were based in another city, this company. And I said, I'm not going to be going there. My relationship with that company is the people on the ground here in Minneapolis. And it is overwhelmingly positive in how they respect me, how they respect the community, what they do with the community, even beyond just the advertising side. And that's how I have to judge them.
Well, that's a perfect pivot point, because I posted something on Facebook and you had some commentary about it, which prompted me to call you over here. But first, some background. Since you've been in the industry for such a long period of time, especially in advertising, can you talk about 22 years ago? Were there tons of corporations, national corporations, chomping at the bit to give their money to an LGBT magazine? What's the difference between then and now in regards to corporations wanting to sponsor or be involved in advertising in an LGBT publication?
Night and day, I would actually say. There were always companies. I don't want to ever give the impression that we're not companies. I like to tell the story of Absolute Vodka. Before they were bought or sold twice, they were their own company. And there were studies or articles that were written that talked about how they made an internal decision that they were going to become known as the gay vodka. And what they did was they started putting their ads in all the LGBTQ media. They started sponsoring different events. They started giving to different nonprofit organizations. And so they put their money where their mouth was. And then I said, if it was, let's say, late 90s, and you had walked up to everyone, you had the ability to walk up to everybody in the LGBTQ community, and you could ask them, if there was a gay vodka, what is it? At least 90% would have said Absolute. So they did put their money where their mouth is, and they started to do, all of the things that, people expected of them when you're going to tap into the community. There were a few companies here and there. I never kiss and tell on names of companies, but there are companies that are national companies that I met with in the early days where they were respectful, but they said, we're just not ready, to make this move. And, you have to respect that you're not going to change their mind at that moment. And you just keep in contact and you hope that one day you can. I mean, look at the sports world. In 2001, I put together Lavenders Out in the Stands. And you have to, for people that are very young, you probably don't remember, but people actually used to write letters to the editor of the major newspapers. So the major newspaper here, one of them is the Star Tribune. Right. And we were doing this event called Out in the Stands that was going to be kind of an LGBTQ day at the Twins. The Twins were not endorsing it. They were not at a place where they could do that at all. But they were supportive, of us doing it. All of a sudden, the Star Tribune did a story on it, and people wrote letters saying, well, is there going to be a straight day at the, and all the usual.
Oh, straight pride,
a straight day at the ballpark. I was like, isn't every day straight day at the ballpark? A national ESPN show called Outside the Lines came to the Twin Cities. They interviewed myself, Dave St. Peter with the Twins, and some other people. And we eventually did the event. We sold over 900 tickets to the event. And, fast forward, we kept doing it a little bit here and there. And then they, by 2000, probably 4 years ago or so, the Twins finally were in a place where they were comfortable doing the event as a Twins Pride Night. And we were happy to hand it off to them. And on the field, I was lucky enough to be on the field for opening ceremonies. And Dave St. Peter saw me, and he called me over, and he asked how I was doing and what have you. And we reminisced on how in 2001 all of this had happened, and here we are. We're the only ones the only two that still remember what it was like back then and how things change. And, all you can ask is for change. So change doesn't usually happen at the pace we'd like it to happen, but I am fully appreciative of the sports teams that they have done that. The next bastion or the next level for the sports teams is when somebody who's a major league ball player, while still playing, is going to come out at that time. And that'll be the next, step in the change. I don't hear you.
It's all about laying the foundation and the groundwork. The dog was over here panting. He just came in from it's all about laying the foundation and the groundwork. And sounds like that's exactly what you did, back in 2001, in order to, lay it so that we could have a day out with the Twins, and for them to, sponsor a national LGBT nonprofit organization and have it on their wall for the whole week and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's progress. All of it is progress, and all of that's needed. So with that background, right, there's currently a lot of pushback in regards to pink washing, right, or rainbow washing, which is the belief that or I guess you can tell me, because this is you're in the industry more than I am. Companies, putting on rainbow flags and all that kind of stuff during Pride Month, saying that they're inclusive in this, that, and the other. But then, they don't have inclusive policies. They're not actually doing anything outside of, trying to say that they're supportive of the LGBT community during Pride Month. So what are your thoughts in regards to that? Do you think it's as prevalent of an issue than what some people perhaps on social media are throwing it out as? I have my own beliefs, but I want to hear your perspective first.
So I'm not sure that I see a lot of companies that do not have inclusive policies going full force with putting pride out there. There are some, and I think they should be called out. But there are other companies that I think the majority of companies that when they're doing that kind of show where they're putting out the flag and they're, maybe having some sort of a seminar or some celebration, those are companies that tend to really embrace the whole thing, have great policies internally, are very comfortable in their image being out there as an LGBTQ friendly or welcoming company. Where I see the big thing, and I would use the word pandering, is in some companies that you don't see any time except for 2 days of the year at a festival. And they're there to make money off of the community, don't have any involvement in the community, don't give back to the community. They have the right to do these things, but I think it is incumbent on us as a community to say that we expect more. I'm willing to buy from you, but I expect you to do more than just look at me as a dollar bill that you can put in your pocket. And I always tell the story, there was a window replacement company that used to always come to the Pride Festival. It's not there anymore. And I'd hardly see anybody go up to the booth. But the company was not there at all, like in the community, reaching out to the community any other time except those 2 days. And I felt like going up, I didn't, but I felt like going up and saying, so you think that by coming here for 2 days, we're suddenly all going to run to you and give you our money? And, obviously he finally got the message. There was a professor at Metro State University who was interviewed probably about 8 to 10 years ago, and they asked her what she thought about the corporations getting involved in Pride. And she said, it's wonderful, but where are they the other 363 days a year? And I think that is a telling statement. I think some companies have done better to have that year-round visibility, but I think a lot of companies still look at us as that opportunity to make some money. And I would say anybody who goes on social media, especially Facebook, and you see the advertisements for companies I've never even heard of, selling a rainbow apron and selling this, and you'll even see in the comments, people will put, boy, is this an example of pandering and what have you. Is that you just see it's Pride Month, so you're going to, where can I make my buck off of that? Now, if you said, well, okay, we're going to do something for Pride Month and we're going to give a certain percentage to the Trevor Project or, to something like that, that's a different story. But I think there are plenty of companies that simply want the dollars without giving the time to the community. I kind of look at the same way I look at for people who are in upper management positions sometimes, or leadership in positions. It's like, don't take the title unless you intend to do the time. And the same is true for reaching out to the community. Don't reach out to us unless you're intending to do the time and put the time in. So
absolutely. And I love what you're talking about, that it's just, you're not just there the 2 days of the year. And what irks me sometimes, and I think I had made some reference to this in one of my last few Facebook lives, is I'll see this collage with all these corporate logos, right? 10, 20 corporate logos. And they're like, corporations are just, they're not doing anything outside of this. And I can recognize that there are companies in there that I know are doing a lot, right? Either they're supporting HRC and providing money there, which HRC is then over there, lobbying our legislators to try to get the Equality Act passed, for example, right? Or that I know that they have 100%, score on the HRC Equality Index, meaning that they are staying up to date with the ratcheting up of the requirements for providing inclusion for everyone, including, let's say, trans healthcare availability for their employees, right? The HRC standard doesn't stay the same. It keeps ratcheting up. Knowing that they have LGBT ERGs, employee resource groups that are there, bringing in speakers and all those different types of things, that they're supporting nonprofits, whether they be a local nonprofit, which I have a preference for, that they're not just giving money to the big organizations, which is great, right? But then they're also, supporting the local organizations. If they're headquartered in Minneapolis, are they supporting the local LGBT, on the ground organizations that are helping LGBT kids or homeless kids and stuff like that? The names of the companies that show up on that testify at Congress, right? I remember speaking at General Mills this year. General Mills was the first company that showed up in the early 90s to testify that, hey, there should be equality. We're providing equality for our employees. You should be legislating that way, supporting the Equality Act way back when. General Mills, right? Like what skin do they have in the game? They're all American. Everybody eats their cereals and all that kind of stuff. Yet they, based on their core values, right? They found that was something that was important enough for them to do, and that they would reap the ramifications of people not wanting to eat their cereal because of it. Companies' names showing up on amicus briefs that go to the United States Supreme Court, like the last decision that we had last June, where the Supreme Court had to make a decision and made the decision in our favor, which no LGBT attorney that I know expected for it to go that way, that they would rule that, sex as it relates to the Civil Rights Act applies to sexual orientation and gender identity as well. And so for me, there's all this stuff that happens in the background that people don't do the work to find out whether these companies are actually doing it. It's just easy to, copy and paste and say, F the corporations, get them out of pride. If sadly, and this is the part that I'm not necessarily happy about, but this is America and this is what capitalism is, at least our version of capitalism is, companies have more money than people do. And so they have more power, influence, and leverage, right? And, we can think about companies like Ben and Jerry's, and that they support anything and everything green and cool and
Right.
equality for people and providing, livable wages to everybody. And not all companies are going to be a Ben and Jerry's, right? But there's still lots of organizations out there, and some of the companies are the ones that are on these, collages that people put out. And it's hard to try to call people out in regards to each and every single one of them and do the research for them when they could just do the research themselves, right? And so that's my challenge and my pushback is, should corporations be completely excluded from prides and stuff? I don't necessarily think so, because yes, the corporations are business entities, but they're also made up of people. And if they're providing, it was companies that started providing, benefits for same-sex couples and domestic partners well before municipalities were legislating that, right? So that's where the groundswell happens and starts. And it's because there's people within those organizations that care and want to make it happen, and they want to make lives better and equal for all those people that work for them. So what are your thoughts in regards to that?
Well, I think there should be a litmus test that at the parade, they have to have a float with glitter and and drag queens, and then they show that they're okay with the whole thing. But again, things take, just like my coming out story, things take a step at a time and go back to, move slowly. We just did a story in the spring on Ryan Companies, a major
construction company
mm-hmm. here. And they have formed an LGBTQ employee resource network.
I attended one of those events.
And so that is a major step for a company.
For a construction company.
For a construction company where the perception is, uber masculinity, and do we want to, have the people like this working for us, there, and to acknowledge that those people do work for you and that you value those people. That is a major thing to me when companies can do that sort of thing. Not everybody's going to be able to throw thousands of dollars in advertising or to sponsor different events and such. So you can't have that as the litmus test, do you suddenly, spend, X and X thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on advertising. Sure, you'd like to see them reach out there, but I think it's just, my big thing is reaching. My joke to people is when they find out, if they don't know who I am and they find out where I work, they will say, "You must love Pride." And I always reply, "I do gay 365 days a year." I said, "Pride is my job." I said, so I think that companies need to look at it the same way.
Mhm.
Are you going after us 2 times a year? Or are you going after us year round?
Mhm.
And the going after us doesn't have to be like you're throwing money at us and think. It is, what do you do? Do you volunteer for an organization? Do
Yep.
you give a little, free items, whatever you carry as a product, to that organization that may be able to use them within the organization, or take them and do some sort of a silent auction
Yeah, I
and
was
do
gonna say, do you
something
donate
else?
to their silent auction so they can get a high ticket
That's it.
item, just
So,
to get some money?
so those are all things that I think that people or that corporations should be able to do. It's not easy to invest in a community,
Mm-mm.
and it shouldn't be easy. It
Right.
should be, all kidding aside, there should be a litmus test. Is, what are you doing that makes you an LGBTQ friendly or welcoming company? Having a booth someplace that
Not enough.
is not
It's
the
not enough.
litmus test.
That's not enough.
That's great that you're there, but, and I'm not saying don't be there, but there has to be more on
Mhm.
top of it that you're going to do in order to really do what Absolute did and become known, that your name is synonymous with being an LGBTQ welcoming corporation. That should be
Absolutely.
everybody's goal.
Absolutely. So one of the last questions for you, Barry. So lots of LGBT organizations have really been challenged over the last year, 2 years, in regards to some accountability of not reflecting the true diversity of the organization of the community, right? And those have been organizations nationally as well as locally. So this is not something that's specifically targeted to Minneapolis. I've seen it across the board, right? Even in Los Angeles with Pride, the embarrassment that happened in regards to that, and I can talk about it because I'm from LA, right? When the Pride parade was canceled because of COVID, because of COVID, and then they said we're going to have a solidarity march with the Black Lives Matter movement, and then like never had anybody from Black Lives Matter involved in the leadership on it or decision making, and then we're going to have police there, and it was like that's antithetical in regards to what it's all about, and it just ended up being this national embarrassment. So what are your thoughts in regards to this sense of reckoning for some of these very well established, long established, running organizations and stuff that are mainly run by white folks that there's no representation or hasn't been any representation previously in regards to diverse voices within the LGBT community?
I knew there was going to be a gotcha question.
This isn't a gotcha question. We've had this
Just
discussion
kidding. I'm
before.
just kidding.
We've had this discussion before. It's not new
Yeah.
news, homie. Don't play that.
No. It's I think part of it is the lay of the land where you are.
Mhm.
The Twin Cities, where we both are,
Yep.
is overwhelmingly white. There's no two ways about it. I reminded somebody just the other day that when I was in New York for Stonewall, the 50th anniversary of Stonewall,
We were both there.
we were both there, but I
We
was
got to see on
walking
the
down.
parade route.
That's right. I was walking down the street with 3 friends, and I suddenly stopped and I said to them, I forgot, as somebody who went to college in Boston, I forgot how overwhelmingly diverse
Mhm.
major cities are. And it's not just that there is somebody who is black. It's somebody who's black from London, somebody who's black African American from Africa, somebody who's, you know, and you get different dialects, and you have, and that's not the case here as
No.
much. It's just it's a different, you know, setup here. I do think that, as I have said, especially since George Floyd's murder, you know, when I walk down the street, without joking around, most people are not going to immediately think I'm gay or I'm Jewish. And so whether, you know, somebody will say affectionately, you can pass.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody that's a person of color cannot pass. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that in our community, where it's where we need to be more representative of things, there are things that I see, you know, when I'm driving down the street and I see somebody who is driving slowly, and I go past them, and this has happened on a couple of occasions, and it ends up being a black person in the car. And what goes through my mind immediately is, are they going slowly because they don't want to be pulled over? They don't want to give an excuse. And it's horrible to think those sorts of things, but that's the world that we live in. But those experiences, you need to bring those kind of experiences into organizations, because there are certain things that, regardless of all the things that I've had, you know, go on in my life, there are certain life experiences that I cannot, you know, I will never have. Mm-hmm. And somebody else who does have it needs to be able to bring those things to light within the organization. So I do think that organizations need to do, we talked about companies doing the work. Mm-hmm. I think organizations also need to do the work. It is things like, are you really putting out your tentacles to try and find people who are more diverse? Not just saying we'd like more diversity, but right. What are you
put in the work? It's not easy.
Right. What are you actually doing? Are you, you know, there are plenty of things that you can do to try and get more diversity. You know, create a BIPOC council, even, you know, just having a roundtable of some people that are supporters of your organization and get their feedback, and then see if any of them want to take another step and be within the organization on a larger level. But I think in communities like the Twin Cities, it's harder, but you have to do the work. Mm-hmm. And in any community, whether it's LA, Boston, you know, what have you, I think there are ample opportunities there to reach and to connect and to learn something new. Right. You know, I subscribe to the theory that nothing stays the same, whether as a person, a business, an organization. You are either improving or you're not improving, or you're going down. And you have to always be looking for what's new and what are different ways to connect with more people. Because in the end, there actually is a benefit to it. You grow your audience, you grow the people that are more interested in what you are putting out there, instead of just being known as a white organization that only caters to certain individuals. Well, wouldn't you want to have more people? And if those more people are people of color, you know, or more women, or, mm-hmm. you know, more religious diversity, all those sorts of things, those are all positives. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing me on board to Lavender. I have my reoccurring column from A to Z. The most recent one is in the Pride edition, talking about emancipation and really the connection that I have based on, the different identities that I present, connecting Pride with Juneteenth and talking about that. And, strangely enough, I get messages on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff where people are, appreciative of the perspective and then taking it and having dialogues and discussions with their family, with their friends, with their congregations, at their jobs. So it's really interesting that, almost over this past year that's happened. And Barry,
Tell that story quickly, if you can, about the message you got from somebody just recently at the downtown council.
Well, that's what I was kind of referencing to.
Okay, all right.
without giving away any information.
All right,
names
well,
and all
okay,
that
we won't name names. That's fine. But I thought it was great. The reason I thought it was great was it wasn't just somebody who was also part of the community.
Right, it was
in
an
the
ally.
LGBTQ sense, they were the ally. They were the A, and that they were picking up the magazine there and reading different perspectives, and that they really appreciated your perspective, which I thought, and we're going to use it with some of the seminars that they had. So
yeah. And you have a scholarship program that Lavender Magazine started. Can you talk about that so people know about that?
Sure. So one of the things that we've done for the second year, we have a scholarship with P Fund, and it funds a BIPOC individual who wants to have a career in the media. So it doesn't have to be, it can be any type of media, any level. And it's a $2,000 scholarship that we do. So I believe they have closed, they got a lot of entries or submissions for this year.
That's
so
great.
You'd have to do it for next year for that.
Put it on their radar.
But that's one of those things. And we did a story, the person who received the first scholarship, we did a story on them in one of our issues, the end of 2020, and it was really well received. And so I think, again, it's, what are you looking to do? Are you trying to find ways to learn more? None of us is ever going to know 100% about, each other's lives. And if you're not part of a certain community, you're never going to know 100% of what goes through, but you can always learn more and you can always be improving. Are you getting better or are you getting worse? And I like to think that, my perception my thing has always been, let's find ways to be better.
And I get to continue to learn from you and all of my Jewish friends, my partner, in regards to the challenges and the strife that the Jewish community does. So it's a give and take from that perspective, where everybody gets to learn from others and be able to have.
And I think just that you said that, I think that's what's given me an additional perspective on being also part of the LGBTQ community. And that is that I learned my entire life that Jews have, that there's been anti-Semitism, there's been wars, there's been different things, and that it's never going to go, as my parents would say, you hope to reduce it, it's never going to go away 100%. And so that's what I try and do within the LGBTQ community. Can we keep moving in a positive direction? I think that the last 4 years made it tough to do some of that. And hopefully we're back on course towards doing some of that.
Hopefully. So I know that you're a recent, became a resident of Robbinsdale. And so you started this whole new LGBT Robbinsdale Connect thingy. So tell us about that before we close it out.
Okay, well, it's called Out in Birdtown, Robbinsdale. So
I was wondering what that was all about.
Yeah, there you go. Out in Birdtown. And, there's a lot of political things that go on, and rightly so. We thought that Robbinsdale actually has a large LGBTQ population, but also is on the border of some other areas like North Minneapolis and Crystal that also have large LGBTQ populations. And we just thought, once in a while, let's just to get together for some, cocktails, laugh a little bit. The world is tough enough with what's going on sometimes in our world, and let's just meet other people and learn their stories and have a good time. And so that's what we're doing. So it's on June 17th at the Bird House. The theme seems to be birds.
Birds.
There. But it's at the Bird House in downtown Robbinsdale on June 17th, starting at 5:30. And there'll be some complimentary appetizers and a cash bar. And, hopefully the weather is nice. We can sit outside and we can hoot and holler a little bit and have some laughs and celebrate Pride Month too. So,
and make some connections and stir up some more trouble, because
Right.
my partner Or and I met some folks recently. One of them is in Robbinsdale and was part of the group that advocated to get Robbinsdale to ban conversion therapy. And so we're sending them your way too. So it's not always just fun, though we always appreciate good fun and a good cocktail,
Right.
but sadly, sometimes our lives and our existence is political, right? And so we have to be able to be there in support of each other as well. We have a dear friend that moved here from Los Angeles that's in Robbinsdale as well. So, and another friend we're going to meet tonight who's in Robbinsdale. So we're sending over everybody to connect with you, Barry. And with
There you go. Thank you. Just don't have them block my view of the lake.
Well, thank you so much, Barry, for everything that you're doing for the community. I mean, you're an institution. You've been with us for a long time. I know you've won your share of awards for your commitment and for sticking with us and evolving with the times and making sure that your organization evolves and is there to be the best voice for us that we need, especially here. So thanks so much, Barry.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I would say the same to you. Thank you for everything you do in the community, for this platform to be able to cover a lot of important issues there that I've gotten a chance to listen to over there, and that, keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks a lot. Until next time, folks, see you next Thursday at noon. All right, our gay history in 50 states. What's Pride Month? Go ahead, Barry. You can dance a little bit. Pride Month. Bye, everyone.
Bye.